I'd like to introduce my friend and former student. Actually, I did some sort of individual project, directed readings, the capstone for what was that, for the Latin American studies? Even though don't do anything related to that, but it was about active transportation and that sort of thing, right? And a student who really enriched my time here at BYU. I really treasure the interactions that I have with students who I get to know off campus as well as on campus, and who call me by my first name, and I feel completely comfortable that they are doing that. So I'm not going to go into Austin's resume or in any way, other than to say that when he was a student here at BYU, he was very much civically involved, helping to change Provo while he was a student. And just to give you one example, he was the director of the Provo Bicycle Collective, something that really helps a lot of students out. I notice a wide mouth of recognition of there, and really help make it what it is today. Although it's encountered some rough spot recently, but it was at the time our then mayor Curtis called it the most dynamic nonprofit in Provo, which is quite the tribute. And also for our political science career students here, Austin has had a very interesting career in local government. When did you graduate?
Here?
Yeah, 2018. Since then, he's worked for Provo City, Park City, and now Salt Lake City in 3 very different roles, and had really interesting experiences at each of those places. So he's going to talk to us about what makes a great community. And I think part of the answer is people like him and you and all of us, right? Who are engaged in our communities, who are agents of change in making the places that we live better places. So with no further ado, here's Austin Taylor.
Thanks, Aaron. Okay, I've got this mic. Does it work? Can you guys hear me? Okay, cool. Thank you, Aaron. So the question that I want to start with and pose to you all is, what makes a great community? This is something that I have thought about and studied and observed as I've worked throughout communities in Utah. Like Aaron said, I have worked in local government and also been an activist outside of the local government, pushing for improvement. And I would say the number one thing that it boils down to, the number one thing that makes a great community is people who care. Right? A great community happens intentionally because all sorts of people come together to work to improve it. They improve the quality of life together. And I want to talk about some of my ancestors. So these are people who care. These are, I don't know how many greats, I think like 5 greats, 6 greats, something like that on my mom's side. This is David Hilton and Marianne Affleck. They lived in England. They heard the LDS missionaries. They were baptized, got married, and sold everything and made the journey to Salt Lake City. They were excited about the idea of creating a Zion community, right? Where people could come together of different backgrounds to work together to create something beautiful. And that was the promise of Salt Lake City. So they made the treacherous journey. They worked hard to create that community. When you watched General Conference, I think this was in 2020, President Nelson was in the bottom of the Salt Lake City temple, and he was putting out the foundation. And my ancestor, David Hilton, worked on that same foundation. So quite literally with his own hands, he helped build Zion. And it's a beautiful legacy to leave. Now, our calling as as Latter-day Saints in today is not so much to gather together in one place and to build a city, to build an insulated city where we all come together. It's more to spread out and to build Zion around the globe. This is a quote from Patrick Mason. He's a professor at Utah State University. He's talking about how the early saints were building Zion in kind of an insulated way. He's talking about a fortress church where we were reserved, we were retreating from the world because of persecutions that were happening. So I'll read it. He says, in response to the very real persecution they had received in the 19th century, our people metaphorically built a fortress church in order to protect ourselves from invaders. When viewed through narrow arrow slits, the rest of humanity and their ideas, or simply the world, as we came to know it, seemed ominous and threatening, single-mindedly focused on our destruction. So we closed the gates, occasionally cracking them open to send out our missionaries and conduct business, and watched nervously for the next assault. And we did that for our defense and for our survival because we were being persecuted as a people back then. But that's not the way that we're to build Zion today. So this is Elder Patrick Kieran. I saw he just came to campus, this week or last week to give a devotional. So this is what he counsels us to do. He says, do we fear the world more than we shape it? Do we let our anxieties prevent us from making a difference? Do we spend more time hiding from society's flaws than fixing its problems? Society is not something that just happens to us. It is something that we help shape. The main thing is to engage, dialogue, bridge, and interact with people of all sorts. Unless we participate, we lose our ability to influence the world and learn from it. So our call is to be in the world. That's one of the things that we are asked to do. We can't retreat from it. So these are teachings from the Savior, be in the world. And it's telling in the New Testament, God so loved the world, right? He loved the world so much that he sent his son to it, right? And then the last thing that Christ said in the New Testament, the Great Commission, go ye into all the world. Right? Go out into the world, improve it, build Zion, improve the world around us. I want to talk about, in this talk, about finding your own personal call to serve. So we all have different interests that we have. And you might not know what that interest is right now. Maybe it will be some sort of political cause, some sort of social cause. When I came to BYU, I didn't know what my area of interest was, and I learned it while I was here on campus. And that's what I'm going to talk about today as I go through things that I've worked on in my career so far. Is I'm going to talk about the call to serve that I've found for myself, and I hope that you guys can also find your own. So on the left is where I grew up. This is St. George, Utah. I grew up in this neighborhood, very suburban, very disjointed, a lot of cul-de-sacs, a lot of winding roads. To get anywhere, if I wanted to walk, I'd have to walk down all these hills, go along all these 50-mile-per-hour streets with no sidewalks. It was not a great place to walk and bike. And when I moved to Provo, Provo has, near downtown, it has quite a different layout. It's an urban city. Right? You have a grid system, you have density, you have a mix of uses, you have public transit like UVX, buses, Front Runner. This is a place where you can walk. This is a place where you can bike. And when I came to college here, I think we all go through a rebellious phase, and my way of rebellion was telling my parents, I don't need a car. I don't need that, right? I want to be independent. And so I did not bring a car to college. Instead, I rode my bike basically everywhere that I went. And I developed a love of bicycles doing that. They were fun to ride because you had freedom. You could go anywhere you wanted to. I also got into repairing bicycles, obsessing over vintage bicycles. I thought they were a beautiful machine. And I just love bikes. And so that took me into a job at the Provo Bicycle Collective, like Aaron talked about. So the Provo Bicycle Collective is an interesting bike shop. Think Deseret Industries, where things get donated, but they actually fix up the bikes, and then they resell them or they give them away to people in need. And so this was a leap of faith that I took taking this job. When I took this job, the shop was in a very small, I think 800 square foot, single bay warehouse, and we had $5,000 in the bank. I was the only employee. Basically, the promise was, work, try to improve this place, see if it works out. You might run out of money, you might not have a job after, but if it works out, it could be something beautiful. And luckily, it did work out, and the Bicycle Collective, while I was running it, went from 1 employee to about 10 employees, and we refurbished hundreds of bicycles per year. I think in an average year, we were fixing up 400 to 600 bicycles, and then donating about half of them to people in need, selling the other half. And it was a beautiful thing, and I loved it. And the thing that I saw riding my bike and giving and selling these bikes to people is that our built environment was not designed in a safe way to walk and bike, right? Here's an intersection here in Provo. This is 300 South and University Avenue. It's an extremely large intersection. I invite you guys to just go walk there. Don't go there in a car because it feels like a different scale. But when you go there, when you're walking, you'll feel the sense of it, just a sense of emptiness. A great open space. If this intersection were to be developed, you have a half acre of land here. You could fit 25 homes here under the current zoning. It's a massive piece of land. This is not how we should be using our prime real estate in the great American cities. And so this frustrated me, and I wanted to fix it. And Aaron helped me learn how I could fix it. He had a group called the Provo Bicycle Committee, and now it's called Bike Walk Provo. And I got involved with it. I volunteered with it. I think Aaron and I worked together. Well, I'm still on the board of the organization, and Aaron's still one of the key volunteers. So I guess I've been involved in it since 2015. So we're almost hitting 10 years now. Aaron's been in the trenches for maybe 20 years, something like that. But the Bike Walk Provo is a nonprofit activist group, and it exists to make Provo a more walkable and bikeable place. So Bike Walk Provo lobbies the city government. It pushes for change at the state level, at the city level, in very real, tangible, infrastructural ways. I don't have the mission statement memorized any longer, but I think it pushes for better infrastructure, better culture, better safety, and has right here. Bike Walk Provo advocates for street design and culture that makes it safe, convenient, and fun for all people to move around by bike or foot. So it's a beautiful thing, and I'll show you guys some of the work that we did. Oh, there it is. There's the mission statement. I forgot I had it there. But it's an all-volunteer organization, and there are dozens of volunteers that each have unique positions. This is an interesting statistic. So when you look at the percentage of people who bike and walk to work, Provo actually ranks really high in the United States. So here we are on number of percentage of workers biking to work. It's about 3%. Sounds very low, but in the United States, that's really good. When you look at percentage of workers walking to work, Provo is nearly 15%. Again, sounds low. It's actually really good for a city our size. And we think Bike Walk Provo has a little bit to do with that. So here's just some happy volunteers, and I'll show you some projects that we did. One of the things that's most fun to do as an organization is called tactical urbanism, where we physically change our built environment temporarily. We do demonstration projects in the street. So here's a photo of us at the Provo Rec Center, 500 North, 300 West, I believe, repainting a crosswalk. So we'd brush off the dirt and debris and then repaint the crosswalk. High visibility, making it beautiful. We did this at nighttime. The police shut down the street for us. This was a sanctioned project. The city allowed us to do this. Here's another crosswalk in that same area that we painted. High visibility, beautiful. And again, the purpose is to make it a safe place for people to walk. The visibility will slow down drivers. When you are driving and you encounter something that you are uncomfortable with or unaware of, you tend to slow down. And so that's what these high visibility crosswalks do, is they slow down drivers. You can see in the background here too, temporary curb extensions made with hay bales. So we set them up for a week, and what it does is it narrows the crossing distance for pedestrians, so they spend less time vulnerable crossing the street. So this was all a demonstration project. Here's another one. This is a roundabout that we did, and we did this with cornstarch paint. So you take cornstarch, you take water, you take food coloring, mix it up, paint with it, and it just washes away at the next rainstorm. This was a fun demonstration project again to slow down cars, and all these things demonstrated to both residents and city leaders that we could change the design of our streets and we could slow down cars. Curb extensions, sharrows, this is all cornstarch paint. Here's another demonstration project. This is called a parklet. So in the United States, we have far more parking spaces than cars. I believe the estimate is there is about 4 to 6 parking spaces for every car that we have in the country. And so a parklet, with this demonstration project, we thought, what if you took just one parking space and you turned it into a space for people instead of a space for a car? And so we wrangled up a grant of about $1,500. We went to Home Depot and bought some planters and some fake grass and put together this parklet. It's a mini park right on Center Street. So this is just east of University Avenue on Center Street. And we hosted a little party there, and we left this up for a few months. And what's really fun is as volunteers and I would walk by just casually down Center Street, we would always see people using it. And it was beautiful. It just shows that there's an untapped demand for public space in our cities. We've given too much of it away to cars. This was another fun project that I worked on. I, along with friends, installed bike racks all throughout downtown Provo. Just these U-racks. They're very simple things, but it makes it possible to bike around town. Some of the other things that we did to create change is to do social media, do memes, right? What I've learned working in city government is nothing makes politicians act quicker than bad press. If you get a bad, media attention about your thing, you're going to change. You're going to change your things. So this was one of the things that we worked on, 3 or 4 years ago. Both the UTA, the city, and Provo City were all pointing fingers at each other saying, no, it's your job to fund the 900 East UVX stop. No, it's your job. And we just poked fun at it. Eventually, this stop did get built. You guys probably use this UVX stop.
It's not built yet.
It's not built yet?
Yeah, but
It's designed.
It's
getting built next year.
It just needs to be built.
Yeah. So what's really funny about this is originally when UVX was being built, there was a neighborhood that was very vocally against this stop. There was a famous what's the newspaper? Newspaper here. It's not Deseret News. It's Provo Herald, Daily Herald. There's a famous Daily Herald editorial where someone said buses are anti-family, and he said we should not be allowing UVX to come through our family neighborhood. It was very interesting. But eventually we flipped the opinion of that neighborhood, and we got many of the neighborhood leaders to sign a petition saying, yeah, we do want this bus stop here. And that was key politically to get all these government leaders to agree to build the bus stop. Another thing that I've learned is that government leaders will rarely do things without pressure. Right? They will rarely step out on a limb and take a chance. Usually you have to create the need for them to do something. And so that's what these things like petitions, media attention, all that stuff does. This is another thing that we did, just a joint press release. Some of the I would say the most powerful lobbyist groups, interest groups in Utah, and probably most areas is business groups. So we partnered with Provo's Downtown Alliance. It's a group of independent local downtown business owners. And we did a joint press release saying, both Bike Walk Provo and Downtown Provo Alliance want this. And at the time, those two groups were the most powerful political groups, interest groups in Provo. And so that created a big statement. And eventually, if you go on Center Street today, these did get built, right? You probably have seen them. They have raised crosswalks, sharrows, I think even like some more speed limit signs. So Bike Walk Provo pushed for all those things, and it took time, but we eventually got them. We will even influence hiring decisions at the city sometimes. And we have a great city engineer. We have a great public works director in Provo City now. And it wasn't always that way. We have had city staff that were very anti-walking and biking, that would not meet with us, that would not listen to our calls for improved sidewalks and bike lanes. But you've got to influence those hiring decisions. And then lastly, we like to take politicians on bike rides and walks, because like most Americans, they spend most of their travel time in cars. And they just live in the built environment like we do. And so it's important to get them on the streets, on their bicycles, walking, so they can feel it and they can get a sense for it. So this is John Curtis. He was mayor of Provo, and now he's a U.S. representative. Looks like he's going to be a senator too. So it's important to have those connections. You never know where people are going to go in their career later on. So it's crucial that we made that connection when he was mayor, and that now he's in Washington, D.C. Maybe something great will come from that for biking and walking. Who knows? And then shifting, that was all volunteer stuff that I did. Shifting now into like my actual working life, my jobs that I get paid to do. This is in Park City, and I used the tactical urbanism stuff from Bike Walk Provo and actually did it in Park City. So this is with some neighbors just out in the street. A lot of them were complaining about speeding on this particular street, and so I said, let's get together, let's do a fun crosswalk. And so we got out there and we got the paint and brushes and painted. This is my son painting. This is his first tactical urbanism project. You've got to indoctrinate them young. And that's the crosswalk, how we did. What was really fun, when I worked for Park City doing transportation planning, I did before and after studies on these kind of crosswalks and every tactical urbanism project that we did. And so we would get speeds, average speeds, maximum speeds. And this crosswalk lowered average speeds by 10 miles per hour. So really cool. It shows you can make a big change with just paint. It's pretty fun. And eventually that should lead to permanent change, like concrete infrastructure, right? So this is Jeff Speck. He's one of the godfathers of the new urbanism movement, and he's written books about walkability. His most famous book is called Walkable City Rules, or Walkable City. And he has a TED Talk, you could go listen to it, called The General Theory of Walkability. And in it he says there are 4 things that make people walk. These are the 4 things. He says the walk has to be useful, the walk has to be safe, the walk has to be comfortable, the walk has to be interesting. And up until this point, when I was working for Park City government, so throughout my career, right, I worked for Provo City, worked for Park City, worked for the Bike Collective. I was all about transportation. And the crucial thing is, safe and comfortable, that comes from transportation infrastructure. So to get people to walk in this country, yeah, you have to have great street design. But that's missing two other points on here. So the walk has to be useful. You have to have a reason for that walk. You have to be going to something, right? And the walk has to be interesting. So I'd say number 1 and number 4 deal with the real estate and the buildings. Number 2 and number 3 deal with the streetscape. And up until this point in my life, I had just been focusing on the streetscape. And it had been, it had been fun, but I wanted a new challenge. And so I went back to school. I went to the University of Utah, and I did the Master of Real Estate Development program. And when I was at BYU, I did not study architecture, I didn't study urban planning, I didn't study finance. I studied urban planning just on the side, and then started working in it and learned it through work experience. And so I went back to school to gain new skills, financial skills, architectural skills. And that's what they call it the MRED, Master Real Estate Development Program. That's what it taught me. And so I had I'd say now I have a more well-rounded vision of the built environment and how it can be created and how it should be created. And so since I went to the U, graduated with this degree, I started working for the Redevelopment Agency of Salt Lake City. And that's where I work now. It is a department in the city government that was founded in the 1960s when urban areas throughout the United States were emptying out. If you guys have studied American history, you've probably learned about suburban flight, right? Post-World War II, so pre-World War II, cities were the happening place. Everyone wanted to be downtown. Post-World War II, the suburbs became popular. Developers built malls. Developers built cheap single-family homes where you could own your own land and you could have open space. And it was a beautiful promise. But what came with that was the emptying out of our core cities. And so Salt Lake City saw a bunch of urban decay. Actually, the population of Salt Lake City dipped drastically from the 1960s to the 1990s. It lost, I think, about 40,000 people, which for a city of about 200,000, that's significant. That means a lot of empty buildings. That means broken windows. That means crime. It's not a great thing. And so the city started the redevelopment agency to try to spur economic growth in the downtown. And that's what we do. We don't just do it downtown anymore. We do it in most low-income neighborhoods. We incentivize investment in neighborhoods that don't see as much. These are the neighborhoods that we work in. If you guys are familiar with Salt Lake City, we call them Ballpark Neighborhood, Granary Neighborhood, Poplar Grove, Fair Park, Downtown. These are not high-income areas. These are, people call them up-and-coming areas. Neighborhoods with a lot of promise. Here's an example of a neighborhood that we worked on. This took a long time. This is the intersection of 900 South and 200 West in Salt Lake City. That's where your son's shop is for the scooters. So if you came here 15 years ago, what you would see is auto repair shops. You would see dry cleaners that have polluted the ground. You would see what we call stroads, just very wide roads with very little purpose. You would see vacant warehouses. It was not a pretty place. What you see here now is great streetscape with trees, with diagonal parking. You see buildings built to the lot line. You see bike trails. You see tracks line with our track station with all 3 tracks lines. Trains coming every 2 minutes. You see multifamily projects going in, both high-end, for sale, affordable, runs the whole spectrum. Now it's a great neighborhood, and the RDA takes a lot of credit for this because we came in and we bought the land, and so we could control the destiny of this neighborhood and what happened to it. And so we flipped it from a mostly deserted, empty, kind of scary place to a very vibrant, walkable place with great transportation options, great housing options. And I'd invite you guys to go check it out if you're in Salt Lake City. It's called the Central 9th Neighborhood. It's not done yet. Obviously, you see this vacant site. This is owned by a developer. It was the polluted dry cleaners, but it's cleaned up now. They're working to build housing on it, and the neighborhood just continues to infill, so it's a beautiful thing. This is a project that I personally worked on. We, at the RDA, sometimes do loans on private projects. So when a developer is putting together a deal, they will use investor money and they'll use loans. Sometimes when the two come together, there's still not enough money to cover the whole project costs. And if you were to try to get more investor money, your return metrics go down. And so it becomes less of a interesting deal to the developers. There's less profit in it. And so we incentivize these projects by adding low interest debt to it. So on this project, we gave a $7 million loan. The total project cost was $120 million. This is a 220 room hotel. And what they did is they took the Union Pacific train station at the Gateway and converted this building into restaurant, bar, lobby, a few rooms, fitness center, and then built a, I believe, 8-story concrete and steel tower with the rest of the 200 hotel rooms in it. And we did this, we were part of this deal because it preserves a culturally and architecturally important building, historic building. It also creates jobs. So a hotel like this, it creates dozens of jobs, maybe 100 jobs or more. And so that creates economic opportunity for people, places to work. So this project will be done in this fall. So you guys can go check it out. We have, this is another part of the deal. We have a public access easement that goes through the historic building and down into the steps of the Gateway. And so anyone can go through and just look at it, and that's part of the deal. It's a public amenity. Yeah.
Is that like a mall area behind the?
Yeah, that's the Gateway Mall.
Oh, okay.
If you know the Gateway, yeah. This is another project that I worked on. This is a loan that we did for an affordable housing project. This is on 500 East, 144 South. It's not particularly exciting, but affordable housing is important. It is needed, and there's lots of it being built in Salt Lake City. And we provide, again, debt financing. On a deal like this, we can be very liberal with our terms. If you're lending on commercial real estate, you'll lend for like 15 years. And today's interest rates are like 6, 7, 8%. On a project like this, I think we lent for 40 years and then a 1% interest rate. And that's the kind of cheap money that we give away for affordable housing. But it needs it because the rents are very low. And this is an interesting project that I just got assigned a few months ago. I'm really excited for this one. This is a west side neighborhood in Salt Lake City called Poplar Grove. And I don't know how, but the city government acquired this vacant lot like 20 years ago, 10 years ago, something like that, and transferred it to the redevelopment agency to get it developed. And this is a neighborhood where development doesn't naturally happen because the rents are low and the sale prices are low, and so there's not a huge financial incentive for developers to build here. And we're going to put this out for RFP, request for proposals, looking for retail development. This neighborhood would love to see a restaurant. They'd love to see a coffee shop. They'd love to see a third space where neighbors could meet together, eat, talk, get to know each other. And so I'm really excited to put this one out. We're going to put it out for RFP next month, and we'll accept proposals from developers and pick the project that we think best matches the city's goals and the community's wishes. So this is a very exciting one. And then to wrap it up, we're coming full circle to my ancestors. It feels really cool to be building Salt Lake City the way that they did, tangibly with their own hands. For me, it's like more of Excel spreadsheets and contracts, but I'm still playing the role of, rebuilding Zion, I guess you could say. So really fun to be a part of it. I am not going to play this video because we don't have that much time, but I'll summarize it really quick. That same author, Professor Patrick Mason, he wrote a book called Restoration, where he talks about, he asked the question, we are in the 3rd century of the restoration of the LDS Church, and he asked the question, what should we do in this 3rd century? And his whole thing is, we should gather together with the rest of the world, and we should improve the world, right? Together with them. We should link arms with people of different faiths, people of no faiths, to improve the world around us. So that's, you guys can check that talk out later, but it's really cool. This is a quote from that same book. He says, we are called to be light, yeast, and salt, to elevate and transform the world. Our heavenly parents want to restore all their children to happiness and peace and flourishing in this life and the next. They have given us a special mission to alleviate the pain and the suffering of the marginalized, the outcast, the voiceless, and the abused, and to use our church community to do so. Another great quote from Elder L. Tom Perry: how our governments need standards of integrity, how our communities need yardsticks to measure decency, how our neighborhoods need models of beauty and cleanliness, how our schools need continued encouragement and assistance to maintain high educational standards. Rather than spend time complaining about the direction in which these institutions are going, we need to exert our influence in shaping the right direction. A small effort by a few can result in so much good for all of mankind. So, to sum up those things, we're called to be the light, the salt, the yeast. It is, I think Aaron will attest to this, it is kind of shocking how few pay attention to local government and important causes and how few get involved in it. Sometimes it's daunting with how big these challenges are and how few people care about them and work on them. But that's exactly what Jesus has asked us to do, is to be those small catalysts to change the world. I like this quote, Dr. Seuss, the Lorax: unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. So, summing up the key topics that I hit: be people who care, be in the world, find your call to serve, be the light, the yeast, the salt. And that's it. Thank you, guys. Just quickly, if you're interested, I have slides just talking about me. So that's me, my wife, my 2 kids. Education, I went to BYU. Latin American Studies, Nonprofit Management, Music Performance. I didn't know what I was doing. And then I went back to the school at the U. Master Real Estate Development, Urban Planning. Volunteering, I've talked about a lot of these organizations. Central City Neighborhood Council, that's the neighborhood I live in now in Salt Lake City. Bike Walk Provo, Senior Utah, different local political campaigns. Aaron ran for city council in Provo, and it would have been great if he won. We really wish he did. But. And then work-wise, this is where I've worked. So Bike Collective, Provo City Government. I do some consulting on the side. I worked for Park City as a transportation planner. I work now for Salt Lake City Redevelopment Agency as a project manager. Yeah, that's it. So I'm answering questions now.
Yeah, we have a mic that's going to go around.
Oh. Okay. Hi, I'm Emma. I first just have a comment. I'm from Sugar House, so I just want to say thank you. I care very much about the vibrancy of downtown Salt Lake, so thank you for all the work that you're doing. My second question is, I feel like some people are hesitant about neighborhood cleanup efforts because it can sometimes be connected to gentrification. And so I was just curious, if that's an issue that you and your team have encountered and how you've been able to clean up neighborhoods but also prevent the issue of gentrification.
Yeah, thanks. It is a complex issue, and it's one that redevelopment agency staff think and talk a lot about, because honestly, part of the work of redevelopment agency is gentrification. Let's define the term gentrification. So gentrification is the improvement of a neighborhood economically, you know, the neighborhood beautifies, higher income people move in, spend more money. That's gentrification. A negative side effect that can come from gentrification is displacement, and that's when people who have lived in the neighborhood when it was affordable can't afford to live there anymore because rents go up. And so this is my personal take, gentrification itself is not bad. In fact, a lot of people benefit from it. If you're a homeowner in the neighborhood, your property value goes up. That means money that you can spend on your child's education. It means you can retire quicker. Businesses, business owners make more money because higher income people move in and spend money there. And then of course the neighborhood crime goes down, beauty goes up, public investment goes up, it becomes a safer and cleaner place to live. Displacement is something that we don't want to happen, right? We do not want people who have lived there in the past to not afford it anymore. And so what the redevelopment agency does to combat displacement is affordable housing development. Like I showed you that one project on 500 East. All throughout the city, we're financing affordable housing projects. And when I say affordable, I mean the rents are tied to an income level and set for 50 years. And oftentimes when that 50 years comes up, developers will purchase them, get new public subsidy, and then commit to another 50 years. And so they're almost infinitely affordable. And so we like to put these in neighborhoods that we work in to prevent displacement. Thanks.
Hi, I'm just curious. I don't feel like I know what my calling is yet, and I felt so, I don't know, I loved this, and I thought that it's really good to specialize and find something because then you can dedicate time and effort to it and not just a lot of random things. What advice would you give me in finding a calling, or all of us finding that niche thing, I guess?
Yeah, I would say take steps of faith, take a step at a time. Like what I did when I first started caring about the built environment, I took that step of faith with the Bicycle Collective. It did not sound like a promising job economically. It sounded like maybe I would not have a job in a couple months, but it developed, when I took that job, I developed a bigger interest in the built environment. I developed connections with people like Aaron, people in politics, people in transportation design, and I just got more and more interested in it. So I would say explore a lot of things and then just take steps along the way once you feel like something is interesting to you.
Yeah, I some specific questions. So I'm the president of the cycling club. I've taken a more active interest in kind of a lot of urban planning things. How have you seen active transportation sort of affect affordable housing initiatives in Provo? Like even things like exterior dwelling units on a primary residence.
So the biggest way that it affects it is in parking requirements. So cities in the United States require a certain number of parking spaces per apartment or per, square foot of office. And as the rate of people walking and biking and riding transit goes up, cities lower those parking requirements. So that's the biggest way that it affects it, and it makes it cheaper to build, which is nice because then you don't have to charge as much in your rent or your sales prices to justify the construction. So the two go hand in hand.
Hi. First, I was wondering what you did with music performance while you were at BYU.
Yeah, so I was a percussion performance major
Nice.
for 2 years, and it was great, and I don't regret it, even though I switched out of the major, because there are a lot of skills that I learned in it. Is anyone here a music major? Awesome. What instruments?
Violin.
Violin? Vocal?
I'm a music minor.
Music minor. Cool. You guys can attest to this. I would say no student receives more criticism and more attention than a music student, because you have to stand in front of an audience and you have to perform, and it's just you, and you have no one else to blame, right? It's like it's all up to you. And so there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of criticism that comes after it when you perform. Your professors will critique the things that you've done, and so you develop a sense of wanting to consistently improve yourself, and then there's a lot of other things, collaboration, but it was worthwhile, even though I didn't end up finishing that major. I don't regret doing it.
Cool. The other thing I was wondering is just if you feel like you're fighting an uphill battle, because I think in a lot of ways, maybe our generation is more like transit pilled and like they see the negative side effects of like car dependent infrastructure and stuff. But I'm just curious how you think about like if we're changing the tide or whatever.
Yeah, it is an uphill battle. Absolutely, Aaron can tell you that every day. And it depends on where you're fighting that battle. But the status quo in the United States is car dependency, and it is suburban sprawl. And so, it's a slow change to steer an entire ship of a real estate development industry, city codes, people's opinions. And so, yes, it is an uphill battle, and I think it always is going to be. Like I said in the talk, we're called to be the yeast, the salt, the light. These are all small things, and we will never be the majority. These are things that will make a change. But there's a lot of hope with urbanism, actually. The entire world population is becoming more urban. More and more people are moving into our cities. Salt Lake City itself has never been bigger. Our population has never been bigger. So I talked about that 1960s drop. We have surpassed our peak from the 1960s. We're at like 215, 220,000, something like that, and climbing. And there is more and more housing getting built and more people moving into the city because they see the quality of life that comes with living in an urban environment.
I've kind of a follow-up question to that. Growing up, my parents were always like very like against the grain of me trying to ride a bicycle or anything like that. They were like, don't do it, but at the same time, we don't want you to drive. So there was always a double standard. And so since then, my parents have developed done a lot of fix and flips, a lot of LLC rentals, and I've noticed as I've started talking with Celeste Malloy, she's the most recent advocate, I feel like, for tiny house infrastructure. Do you feel like there could be a GOP conservative outreach to kind of heighten the stakes on that, to kind of conserve funds overall in affordable housing?
So you're asking if
could it
people
be
on
more,
people on the right,
yeah.
people on the Republican side will care about urbanism and affordable housing, and I would say they do care about affordable housing. If you look at, there was this Deseret News poll where they asked Utahns, what is your most important political issue? And the number one issue people responded with is affordable housing. And we know that Utah is majority Republican, majority right-leaning, and so I believe they care about that. I'm less optimistic about people on the right side of the political spectrum caring about urbanism in cities, and I do get frustrated with how divided our communities get politically. If you look at any voting map in the United States, there is not a single urban area that is politically diverse. They're all liberal. And if you look at the suburbs and you look at rural America, they tend to all be conservative. And so we've divided ourselves, and it's not awesome. I don't love it. Provo's kind of fun because you have a mix of both. You have a lot of liberal-leaning people because of the university. You have a lot of conservative-leaning people, and so it's an interesting place. Salt Lake City is overwhelmingly liberal, and you have you have like center left, and then you have far left, and it would be great to see a more diverse mix of ideologies in our cities in the United States. But the trend is that's not happening. The trend is that conservative people are moving to the suburbs and liberal people are moving to the cities, and I wish it weren't like that. And I don't know how you change that. Maybe one of you guys can fix that.
No, there's a challenge.
Yeah.
Thank you for your great questions and your attention, and thanks to Austin for his presentation. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.